We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, Shelby County Board of Supervisors regular meeting. Any conflicts, gentlemen? Guys had a chance to look at the agenda? Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion.
Second. Charlie, second by Mike. All in favor? Aye. Consider approving the minutes from the last meeting.
Good deal. Motion. Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Charlie. All in favor? Aye. Any claims? You guys have a chance to look at claims?
Chairman did not see anything out of the minutes, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion from Mike, second from Charlie. All in favor? Aye. Lonnie McGuire, come on up.
You want me to end that?
She's our Southwest Iowa Regional MHDS report.
Good morning. So, as you know, the region is dissolving as of June 30th, and we were notified last Tuesday that Potawatomi County, that had been representing the region, was awarded the Disability Access Plan RFP. And so at this point, we don't really know what all that means. We're looking through the contract and the legal means of that. And then we should know by the middle of April what the details of that will be and what the future of the office will be as well. So at this point, I really don't have any updates as far as General Assistance Office. Should you know more in April, so I'll just come back once I know what the future is. At this point, we don't know where we'll be renting the different offices in the district, the new district. We've got both districts 4, which is the Council of Southwest Iowa district, and the District 1, which is Sioux City, in that area there. So we'll have to kind of pick where we want those different offices to be, so that strategically placed down those districts. But at this point, I don't really know the offices is where they're located.
Can you explain to the people that don't know what MHDS stands for?
Right. MHDS stands for Mental Health and Disability Services. So mental health used to be a county-funded service, and there used to be central point of coordination. So I used to be the central point of coordination for Shelby, Harrison, and Monroe County. There was a 2080 agreement between those 3 counties that I covered the mental health and disability services. So we used to fund those services for individuals that usually resided in our county. Probably about 10 years ago, it was 2014, there was legislation passed that stated that the state no longer wanted individual counties, so they wanted to be regions, and so at that point regionalized, and as a group of board of supervisors came together and decided that they wanted to join the Southwest Iowa Mental Health and Disabilities region, and we've been doing that for the last 10 years. Things have been going well in our region, but evidently the state didn't feel like it was going well in other parts of the state. So there was legislation passed that the state wanted to move away from regions and to go to completely state-funded services and to redistrict the whole state. Instead of having regions, we now have districts. And so that legislation was passed last year, and so it goes into effect July 1st. And so what they took, what the regions had been doing for mental health and disability services, they dismantled that and made it 2 separate RFPs. So the first RFP was basically the funding piece of the mental health and substance abuse and gambling. They separated that out into one large RFP, and then the second RFP was basically the service coordination, the navigation of the system, not for it's for chronically mentally ill and the developmentally disabled. We invited both RFPs. We did not get the first RFP. That went to a separate one entity, the Polk County area that will cover the whole state. But fortunately, we did get the second RFP, and we were awarded District 1 and 4. So at this point, we don't know all the details of that. We don't even know if we can keep all the employees that we currently have within the region due to the restraint that the state has put on the funding for that system. So I'll know more probably in April.
Congratulations on getting that District 1 and 4. That'll help people here keep the same contacts.
Yes.
I think it would be a smoother transition than if it would have gone somewhere else. So that was a big step.
And as far as, like I said, the general assistance, if it happens that we don't have an office anymore in Harlan, and the county wants to look at, doing something different with that budget, or who can understand that, and I'll help you transition over to whoever you decide that you want that to go to. Right now, the budget's about $44,000. 4,000 of that is for administration, of us doing that GA budget for you, so. Like I said, I'll show you more info and we'll kind of go from there. There was some information sent out by the state, I believe, to the auditor's office. There will be some things once we close out in July that unfortunately the state's going to give back to the counties to pay for. So you will have to have some type of, what they'll call it, a budget, general supplemental budget that will cover, it's basically committal, mental health committal expenses. So it would be your attorney fees for mental health commitments and your sheriff's costs for those commitments. So I'm not sure who at the county level will have to do that, but we will be responsible for those costs. And I think Suzanne Watson, the CEO of the current region, will probably be reaching out to you more instruction as she finds out what they can do.
Okay. Thank you, Lonnie.
Yeah, thank you.
Chris Frederickson, our county engineer, update.
Morning. Start out with
You guys hear all right in the back?
No. Use the mic.
Sorry.
How's that? Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, first off, we'll start off, there's right-of-way permits I asked for approval on. I have 13 from Farmers Mutual Telephone and 2 from Nishnabotna Valley OAC. All the Farmers Mutuals are for fiber installs, different areas of the county. I have all their bond information and their insurance. The RAC is for a couple of different underground line bores. One of them is for a bridge project over through, so that will be helping us out tremendously. So I don't know if you want me to read off locations or...
They're just standard installs we do all the
Yes.
time. So.
Yes.
Wasn't there no road closures or anything like that?
No, there won't be anything involved with that. So if you would approve those, I would appreciate it.
I will make a motion to approve the right-of-way permits.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Second item for approval, I have the resolution, it's 2025-12. What this does, accepts the bid from Western Engineering for our M16 asphalt paving project. And it also allows me to sign off on the contract from the Board of Supervisors. All that's done online now, so it's a little different process than it used to be. Western's bid for this project was $3,736,217.34.
And that's going from F32 to Shelby?
Correct. Correct. So it's just short of a 14-mile stretch, or 15-mile stretch, excuse me.
Sorely needed.
Yes. So that should be a big improvement.
Yeah.
Once we get it done. And I don't expect that until fall, probably sometime, but we never know. It's up to the contractor when they want to show up, so.
All right, if you have a motion to approve the project STPS CO 8388.
That's it.
We'll have some reservations about 34 cents. But I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Okay, just a couple of, not really updates, but points of discussion here. Talking like a fairly decent snowstorm/rainstorm. If we get a lot of rain prior, obviously the roads are going to be very, very soft. And you put inches of snow on top of that, it could be an ugly situation. So we'll see what happens going forward and what we get. As far as what we can do, we'll do what we can without doing any extra damage to the roadways. So I get this might not be a great situation coming, but it sounds like the temperature should warm up quick. And
We're talking wet, heavy snow, which takes the rock with it when you're blading.
yes, it does. And if we go out and make tracks and dig in the road, it's even worse. So like I say, we'll do what we need to do, and if people need out, we'll get you out, but bear with us,
This
please.
will melt pretty quick, it sounds like, too. So.
I hope so, I hope so. Trevor, who is my assistant engineer, he has completed all his Iowa DOT certifications, so he's ready to go now. He was in class almost 4 weeks overall, so he'll be ready for our paving project, and that'll be a big help. So that is a big plus. The last thing I'd like to talk about here quick, and I've been in contact with the sheriff's office, and I know they're working hard on it also, but we've had a severe problem with persons or an individual dumping large amounts of tires in the southwestern portion of the county. More than 1,000 tires, maybe close to 2,000 tires, at least 8 spots. So by the time you figure disposal fees, cost to take them out, labor, equipment, we're in the tens of thousands of dollars. So I just ask if anybody sees anything suspicious or notices anything, either contact myself or contact the sheriff's office. It's something that's going to affect all of us, and it's not good. I did print off, that's just 2 of the spots, just for a quick glance. And obviously we start getting rain and things will start moving and grass is going to grow up in them. And it'll just be a disaster. So, like I say, if the public can help watch and just, if there's anything that happens, let us know, I'd appreciate it. So, other than that, you don't have any questions, that's what I've got for today.
Thanks, Chris. Todd Boleen, Chamber report.
Good morning.
You'll need the mic.
Probably not. Just have a very quick report because we've got other business to get to. So, the votes are in, and so we have our annual awards banquet March 21st. We give away 3 awards. We give away an award for the new Chamber Business of the Year, the Chamber Business of the Year, and then the Nonprofit Chamber Member of the Year. And we are down to the 3 finalists. For the new Chamber Business of the Year, we have the Westphalia Clubhouse, Harlan Social Energy and Nutrition, and Rosa Blanda Farm. For the Chamber Business of the Year, we have Four Seasons Travel, Shelby County State Bank, and Osborne Auction. And then for the Nonprofit Chamber Business of the Year, we have the Harlan Community School District, the Shelby County Fair Board, and the Shelby County Historical Museum. So these votes are gathered among the chamber members. You know, we send out a ballot to them and they let us know the top 3. So again, March 21st, starting at 5 p.m. at Vets. If you'd like to come and support any of these nominees and see if they win the award, please join us. It's $40 per person. That includes a meal. We play some games and then we'll give the awards out. Couple of items to note: Saturday, March 15th, hosted out at the Shelby County Chamber will be the next legislative coffee. That'll be at 10 a.m. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the February coffee due to weather, so we'll have a lot of topics to discuss here in March. Tuesday, March 18th, if you can, there is a Harlan Community Blood Drive from 11:30 to 5:30 at Vets. You can give Sue a call at 579-8012 if you'd like to schedule an appointment. And then just a reminder that Lent is starting, so also starting Friday night is fish fries. So make sure you get out. We'll have fish fries at the St. Joseph's Hall in Early, and also the Knights of Columbus will be doing one here in Harlan. It's always a lot of great food, $15 for adults. Kids are $10. So get out, support the churches, have some wonderful fried fish, maybe some fish tacos if you come to the one here in Harlan. And that's my report.
Thank you, Todd. County library funding. Paulette. Morning.
think I still have my teacher voice. After 38 years, it just didn't go away. Good morning. I'm Paulette Manson with the Elkhorn Public Library.
And I'm Logistic Nicholson with the Irwin.
And Amanda Brewer wanted to let you know that she's very disappointed that she had something come up, so she couldn't be here this morning, but she will give you a report later. So to begin with, so I put together, we had a statewide Zoom for all of our library trustees on January 30th. And so our trustees at the Elkhorn Library attended it. And one of the things that they talked about was to let our people who provide income to us, to let them know what the financial payback is for their funding that they give us. So what I did is I took our library program actually tells you the value of the materials that are checked out. And so for the 23-24 fiscal year, we had $247,900 in materials checked out. So in other terms, people saved that much money because they came to the library and got things instead of purchasing them themselves. Shelby County provides 34% of our patrons, and your investment of $8,500 works out to be $319 for each dollar that you invest with us. So thank you for that investment. We hope you feel like it's a valuable investment for the community, for the Shelby County funding. We also then provide the programs. And last year we had, and all of this material is available, so I'll just go to our total. We had a total of 354 programs with 4,320 people attending. So it's good to have busy things going on. We also have public computers so people can use them. We have a converter for copying VHS to DVDs. Last year we had a family bring us over 200 tapes to copy. It was very interesting.
Do you know off the top of your head the fees for that?
$3. $3 per tape, yeah. And then we're also there to have a place for the kids to come after school and have all that fun too. I do have some of our brochures. We put together, I still call it a semester brochure, but it was January through this May. And so it lists all of our children's programming, our teen programming, adult programming, and then our general programming. So March is Artist Month, so we're having an artist workshop. We're also having a workshop about how to write your own book with Anna Redsand on the 13th, or the 12th at the library. So if anyone's interested in that, she's written a couple different books, and she actually used to teach classes about how to write your own book, so college classes. So thank you for your support. We appreciate that.
Sure.
Like I said, I went to the Irwin Public Library, and they're pretty small, and they haven't had a library director in over 2 years, and I have been there since July, so I'm learning a lot of new things as myself as the director and as a library board. Our budget is interesting because they haven't had a library director to pay before. They haven't had a lot of programs other than 1 week of summer reading. And so financially, we're having to just move a lot of things around to be able to offer more programs to the community. Irwin is small, and there's nowhere for other people to go to, be with other people and visit it, or they don't have a fitness center like Harlan does, things like that. So we're slow, but slowly growing. You can see on the graph from 2022 to now. Just our numbers are improving and we're getting more people to come in the door. In the last year, we were able to purchase Libby, which the other 2 libraries in the county have already had it for a while, but it's, they can use their phone to check out books, and it doesn't cost them anything. All they have to have is a library card to be able to do that. So that has been a huge stepping point for our library. We've had a lot of people come in to get a library card just to use the Libby app. You can read all of the things that we've kind of been doing since July, and now we're just getting ready for summer. Like I said before, they've only done 1 week of summer reading, and I'm trying to encourage them that we need to be doing things in June and in July, and maybe even a little bit in August, not just 1 week. And their library program before was only geared towards 4 to 9-year-olds. And I'm like, well, there's more people than that. So just trying to encourage the board to allow more programs for other age brackets. And again, just trying to move money from spots to make that work because they've never had this in their budget before. So I do want to thank you for just allowing everyone to have a library, and it's doing really well for their community, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to wages for hourly non-union employees for fiscal year 2026. During our budget process, we came up with 2.5% July 1st increase for those non-union employees, with a 1% merit increase in January. Any further comment on that, gentlemen? No. Karen?
Through it pretty thoroughly over several different meetings, so.
I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second. Motion from Charlie, second from Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Stipend positions. We have several positions in the county that instead of hiring somebody full-time or part-time, we just stipend a current employee. We have a dam inspector. The fiscal year 2026 stipends we're asking for is $3,675 for the dam inspector. Wellness coordinator, $1,575. Safety director, $7,200. Zoning director, $8,150. GIS coordinator, $2,625. And the only increase for this year is the budget director is Taryn, going from $5,250 to $6,750, and she earns every dime. She does a very good job. It's a tough job. So I would ask for a motion to approve these stipend positions.
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Motion from Mike, second from Bryce. Any further, or Charlie, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Supervisor committee reports. Mike?
Couple of things since the last meeting. I attended the Board of Health meeting on the 25th. The WIC program is now operating out of the Emmanuel Lutheran Church. That's a new location for that. April 26th will be Kids Fest, and they'll have a mobile health unit there, so if you want to take your child there to get vision screening, hearing screening, etc., you can attend that for free. There is a new Facebook page for Virtue Public Health Department, so you can find that. That's something new they've not had before, so you can just keep track of what all they're doing. Also, during that meeting was environmental health meeting, and I found it interesting. Over $33,000 has been paid to landowners who have plugged their wells so far this year. So it's a big program. So if you want to rehab your well or plug it, there's dollars available for that. I did attend the Health and Human Services Town Hall meeting, covered most of what Lonnie talked to us about. So that was interesting, and it was very nice to hear that they were named one of the 7 disability access points And all the current providers that provide services right now, they will have the first right of refusal, so they'll be offered the chance to continue offering those services. If they choose not to, they can do that also, but they'll have the first chance in. And that was it.
I just had one thing I want to bring up. Our county has a beaver bounty, $25 a tail. As of right now, we've only had 125 brought in. Like right now, till April 15th is the closing of season, is the time when people like to trap them. So this does a great service for the county. We have to go out, as Chris will testify, and unplug tubes all the time because of beavers. And this, without the fur prices not good anymore, this is one way we can kind of mitigate getting the beaver population down. So we have 200 tails available, so if you know anybody trapping, you guys have land, you got beaver problems, there's 200 tails available. So let your trappers know that.
Thursday, I attended the SWPCO meeting in Atlantic. We appointed a new chairman of the board. And Friday, I was in Atlantic attending the 100 Canyons meeting. And we have a new director, Paul Osmond from Crawford County is taking over as director. John Thomas resigned. And Paul is going to retire as engineer in Crawford County, so he will be our director from now on. That's pretty much it.
Any department heads want to give a report this morning? I don't see any, so we'll move on to consider approval of resolution 2025-13 to set the tax levy hearing date. I think we came up with April 1st at 8:30 before our regular meeting to have this hearing. Need a motion to approve that date? Motion. Second? Motion from Charlie, second from Mike. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Okay, now that you've all been waiting for us, our friends from Summit, Mike has organized all this, going to turn it over to him.
Good morning, welcome. Summit Carbon Solutions, as you know, is working on the proposed pipeline, and they have agreed to come this morning to give us an update, so I thank them for that. This is Kylie Lang and Riley Gibson.
Yes.
Right? So appreciate their time this morning, and I just want to ask that you keep questions. We're not here to rehash some of the things that we've gone over the last year regarding eminent domain and county ordinances and those kinds of things. It's more on what's the progress of the project coming, what do our first responders need to know, and how they'll be helped through this process as it becomes a reality. So again, I don't want it to be a debate on those issues I talked about. Those are being decided by the legislative branch and the judicial branch. So those things are kind of out of your and our control at this point. They have agreed to take questions throughout the presentation, right? Or do you want to wait till the end? It's up to you.
We don't have a long presentation,
Okay.
so either way.
Okay, so if you have questions, just raise your hand and just speak up. Maybe stand up and speak up when you have a question. If you want to come up to the podium, you can. If your voice will carry and everybody can hear you, that's fine too. But I would ask you to rise and state your name if you have a question. So I'll turn it over to Kylie. Okay.
Yes. I guess you guys, it's not that much in the folder, but there you go. All I just handed them, it's just a map of the county and the tax information related to the project, so if anyone wants a copy, we probably don't have enough today, but I can get you a copy of it pretty easy. So my name is Kylie Lang. I'm the Iowa project manager with Summit Carbon.
Can you use a microphone?
Here, right here.
Yeah. Hello. All right. So I mentioned, if you can hear me, my name is Kylie Lang. I am the Iowa project manager for Summit Carbon Solutions. I've been on the project over 3 years now, working around Iowa, working on the pipeline and various different stages that we've been in. Most of you, I'm assuming, are familiar with the project, but I'll give a really brief what is the project in case anyone in the room isn't. What we are doing is we are tying to the ethanol plants in Iowa, as well as Nebraska, Minnesota, South Dakota, and North Dakota. We will be capturing their carbon on site that they're currently emitting to the atmosphere. we will put it in a pipeline and take it up to North Dakota, where it will be permanently sequestered underground. The reason behind this, the why for the ethanol plants, is they need to lower their carbon intensity score to qualify to sell into low carbon fuel markets. So these markets are ever expanding, and the biggest piece of it that has come out in the last couple of years is sustainable aviation fuel. So sustainable aviation fuel is basically ethanol for airplanes. What is different about it is where we're all used to that 10-15% blend of ethanol into gasoline. Sustainable aviation fuel is a 50% blend into jet fuel. So it's a much larger market than the ethanol market ever has been. They think it's going to be something like 6 times the size of the ethanol market. But to qualify to produce sustainable aviation fuel, you take ethanol as the feedstock, but it has to be considered low carbon. Their carbon intensity score has to be low enough to qualify, or they can't produce sustainable aviation fuel, which is just a growing and expanding market that, Delta, American, United at this point have all made massive commitments to using a certain percent of sustainable aviation fuel. We believe corn and corn ethanol should be that feedstock, and it should be here in the Corn Belt where sustainable aviation fuel is produced. So that's the why behind the project. And then, since most of you are familiar, I'll jump right into where we are at the project. So, starting with Iowa, we received our permit, the original permit in June, and then the final permit in August of this past year to construct what we reference as phase 1 of the project. Phase 1 is what goes through Shelby County. So that came through the Iowa Utilities Commission, previously Iowa Utilities Board. We received that permit where they approved our route and also made several changes to our route, which eventually led to an approval. In the other states, Nebraska is a little bit different because there's no state permitting, so I won't talk about that one too much. In North Dakota, we have received both our pipeline permit as well as our permit to sequester underground. So both of those permits were required. We actually have 3 sequestration sites. All 3 are permitted at this time. Minnesota, we permitted a piece of the route in Minnesota because the routes don't connect. The northern piece is fully permitted. In South Dakota, we submitted our permit in November, and they have a 1-year statutory timeline. So they have 1 year from November to make a ruling on the permit, and our hearings for the South Dakota permit will be start about mid-August, so they are set at this time. They believe they'll run for about 5 weeks. Phase 2 in Iowa, which doesn't affect you guys quite as much since you don't have any pipe in phase 2 of our route. But the permits were, we had the informational meetings, backtrack a little bit, we had the informational meetings about September of last year. I think they started in August, ran through September of last year, in the counties that are affected by phase 2. We then, in October, submitted the permits to the Iowa Utilities Commission. At this time, no hearings or process has been moved forward, so we're just working through the process at this time, but there's no scheduled dates worth noting at this point. So that is where the project is at. I think most people in the room are aware that a lot of it is hinging on South Dakota, and that is currently progressing. So we're mostly here to answer questions from you guys, hear from the public if that's your interest, but that's what we have for an update.
I'll get just a couple of quick ones if I could. In visiting with Kaylee at a previous meeting, she had mentioned that the route that was approved can be modified at some point. And I want to just ask if that is true, if what's been approved, if that can be modified, if the route can be moved one way or another anywhere. And the second question then, are there other methods of capturing the gas at site, and why is the pipeline, why is this the best way to handle that?
So the first question, the IUC has locked in the route at this time. They've given small amounts of wiggle room that you can make small changes. I don't remember the exact distances based on pipe size, how much you can make changes. They've allowed for very small modifications.
And other methods of capturing gas.
And then at the ethanol plants, talking with the ethanol plants, and I am absolutely not an expert, I'm a pipeline person. They have went down every route they found feasible to lower their carbon intensity score. And they've done a decent job, right? When ethanol came out in, late 90s, early 2000s, and it was really expanding, their carbon intensity wasn't that much better than gasoline. And through on-site processes, they dropped their carbon intensity pretty significantly. It was in the high 90s, now it's high 50s, mid 60s is where they tend to sit today. They're all a little bit different. But so what they've done is they've hit a limit of how much they can lower their carbon intensity score without incredibly large investments into their ethanol plant. So this project, by capturing the carbon and storing it underground, drops their carbon intensity score by 50%. So if they're at 60 right now, they'll go to about a 30 point, it's all a point system on the Greek model, which then triggers them immediately to qualify for all of these markets we've been talking about. They haven't been able to find something financially feasible, technologically available, that would get them this type of decrease.
Any other questions from the table up here? Steve Kenkel is this on? Steve Kenkel has been retained by the county to act as their liaison through this project. He has a depth of knowledge that none of the rest of us have, and we didn't feel we had time to catch up before everything's done, so we retained Steve to keep an eye on things and ask questions and provide answers to us. He's done a good job of that so far. So.
Thanks. Good morning. Thanks for coming today. A couple questions I have. I know everybody's here today to find out how this benefits our county, how this benefits the landowners, farmers of our county. And so I pose this question. There are 4 ethanol plants within 60 miles of Harlan, all the way around. It's north, east, south, west. I'm a farmer myself. I sell tool. I sell to Denison and over to Blair. None of these 4 plants are hooking up to Summit's carbon pipeline. And when I've asked them, they said, we have other options for the CO2. So, and it's from dry ice, it's to baking soda, it's plastics, some are looking at aviation fuel. They're doing this on their own. So if we have a pipeline running through our county with no ethanol plant here, can you explain how this benefits us?
Yeah, so, sorry, Doug has raised his hand. In Shelby County, you guys don't specifically have an ethanol plant. There is an understanding that plants close by at this time are not connected to the pipeline system. But what it does is it increases availability for ethanol by putting so much of the market into the low carbon bucket, which is a huge percentage of the market with how many plants are tied onto the system. It gives ethanol a seat at the table when we're talking about e-fuels, when we're talking about low carbon options. So when we talk about the long-term viability of ethanol, the long-term viability of the Corn Belt using sustainable or creating sustainable aviation fuel, this project allows that seat. So that's a big piece of it. And yes, you guys may sell, or some, I can't tell you where everyone sells. You sell, my guess is that's the Anderson.
The majority of them are in that 60-mile range.
Yep. But if we expand the plants that are capable of dropping to below that low carbon threshold, we expand them, now they are going to build a sustainable aviation fuel plant on site. That could nearly double the amount of corn they're going to take in. So although maybe it's not in the window of where you're selling, it's going to create a larger market, which then, increases the value of the corn across the state of Iowa.
But our 4 ethanol plants are doing that for us already.
Your corn is worth more than if you were to sell to the state.
If you're saying that we're going to be left out, I can guarantee you these ethanol plants are going to go up if yours goes up too.
I'm not saying that.
So we're going to benefit anyway, and we don't have to get rid of the CO2. That's a marketable product, and they're using that. And so we have a pipeline that are possibly going to run through our county. We're going to drive over it to go to the ethanol plants. But again, what's the benefit of the landowners here, whether that pipeline is here or it isn't here?
I guess, to me, what you said was you're going to benefit from the other ethanol plants increasing. You're probably right, the corn market is just going to be what the corn market is.
Right.
So the ethanol plants who are choosing not to join the project will benefit from an increased corn market.
But we don't know that for sure.
I guess that'll be a conversation with Iowa Renewable Fuels
Right.
and other research entities that have worked on that.
Okay. And then the next question is, I was on the board when, I think it was about June of '22, you brought the tax statement to us and said our county would benefit by $867,390. Now the new statement says $758. What changed?
There was a reassessment in the data. We went to the state, went through a more rigorous process. As you can see, before we had a bucket, and now we have, I don't know if you're looking at the new flyer, we've spread it out into actual where it's going to spend, and it's just through the years, there's just been a change in the tax evaluation and how it was processed. These are definitely estimates. We went to a different firm to create the estimates. But they are, if you watch, they track pretty closely with the pipelines in the ground like Dakota Access.
Yeah, because that was our question, rather was there, that we asked them, how solid of a number is this? And you were sounding at that time, it was pretty solid.
I think it still remains it's a solid estimate, so it is an estimate. But I'm happy to get you in front of our VP of tax, who I promise can talk tax better than I can.
Well, then I wanted to know, because then you had a breakdown of what the county could receive. From 758, it went to 324, and then I reached out to our county assessor and asked him to do a little research. With Department of Management sets all the tax statements for us when we're all done. And I don't know, I'm hoping you're working with them. I reached out to Tony Bume, and Tony, can you address this?
I did. I did reach out to the Department of Management, who are the ones that actually state assess pipelines, and they said they've not been involved in any of the estimates and actually don't do estimates. But it's based on 10% stocks and bond debenture, basically 40% income and 50% cost of the project is where the assessment for tax purposes come from. And then one other thing we saw when we were looking at the estimate, the breakdown does not include any of the other entities that would also get local property taxes out of that total. So places like the hospital, the assessors board, various folks like that don't have it. So if we take out the amount of money that would go to those entities, assuming it was part of the kind of the other portion after you take out the townships, the schools and so on, the county's looking close to 100,000 less for the county than what was projected in the printout there.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, we can't control where the money goes in the bucket, right? This is state assessed. The full tax dollar is looking somewhere like $750,000. It'll be broken up by the state assessor. We do have another general fund is what we're calling it. So you're saying another 100,000 will go out of that general fund and go to hospitals and wherever the state assesses it to. But that is still dollars flowing into Shelby County.
But then it'd be better if you did separate it out and say the county's going to get this much, but we're going to get 25% less.
If you want more detail, I'll be happy to
Well, I
break it
just
out
mean if you're going to put it out there.
Yeah, I think there's only so many numbers we can fit on a flyer, but this is the total amount. We do have another bucket, which is the $324,000. Happy to get more detail on the breakout for you.
So, let me stand here. So, who did your accounting?
We got a new firm, and I'm so sorry that I cannot remember the name. It is not Ernst & Young.
It's not Ernst & Young.
It is not, and I'm blanking on the name. I can get it for you if you stay a minute after.
Okay, so the other thing is what do they base it on?
So they will base it, or they did base it on the cost of construction. So the first several years, he might know answers to tax questions better than I do. I'm an engineer. The first several years, it will trend very closely with the cost to construct the project. That will eventually change to the value of the asset, which will also align. What we see with Dakota Access is every time they are assessed, they're actually increasing in value because of the cost of steel. But initially, the basis is on the expense expected for construction.
The last time you were here, which was June, it was actually June 7th, they said, or you said, I'm not sure you were there, Kaylee. It was stated that they were basing it on Dakota Access. Well, Dakota Access didn't come through Shelby County.
If they stated that, it was slightly incorrect. What we're saying is, if you want to validate the numbers, Dakota Access is a really good example. One difference is going to be counties with ethanol plants are going to have a larger valuation on our project than counties in the Dakota Access Pipeline because they don't have as much above ground structure.
Right. Okay, so basically, the benefit I get is huge erosion because it's rolling and it's got terraces. And the other benefit I get is that my land values will go down, or our land values will go down. So consequently, I'm going to go to Tony's office and say, change my property tax, because I'm not going to pay that kind of tax for land that we're not going to farm, and that the overall value is going to go down. There's no way somebody's going to want to put a house on land that has a pipeline in it.
Two things on that. First, when we talk about the terraces and erosion, several years ago on this project, we heard we're concerned about our terraces, we're concerned about our terraces, we're concerned about our drain tile. And at that time, I think back in 22, might have been 21, we made the decision in every agreement that we have signed with landowners, we have put a lifetime warranty on terraces and on drain tile. So if you're losing erosion because of the pipeline, because of the construction of the pipeline, it is within the easement agreement that we will come back and repair those terraces and those tiles.
Well, you can't restore no-till land. I mean, there's only one being that can do that, and that's God. You move one particle of soil, and you've ruined the structure. The microbes are going to be torn up, the worm, it's just going to be a big mess, and boring under the roads to get to the fields makes it even worse.
I guess two things on that one. If we're concerned, if we want to have a conversation about no-till, I'm happy to. I would have to talk specifically about what your land looks like, so we could do that after, have a different conversation about it. And then boring under the roads, I guess, are you referencing the bore holes at the edge of the right-of-way?
They won't be at the edge.
The road right-of-way?
They'll be farther back into the field. It's not going to be...
It's going to be dependent on the size of the road that you're crossing and the depth of the ditches next to those roads.
Which is steep.
Okay, a couple things. Our land is also no-till, so we would experience the same thing, and I think there's a lot of other individuals here that do the no-till. When it was testified with the IUB about how they will decompact the soil, they talked about going in and knifing it and creating those shock waves within the soil. What do those shock waves do to the tile land? What do they do to our water lines that go to our well? So that's one question. Another question is, do you intend to bore under all of the roads in Shelby County where your pipeline goes, so you're not cutting the roads, you're actually boring underneath them? And to Steve's point, there's that according to the map I just measured now, it's closer to 140 miles from the plant in Shenandoah, Iowa to the plant in Galvin that I understand has closed now. of pipeline that's cutting through our land, destroying our land for no benefit for us as the landowners in Shelby County. We have no ethanol plant. You could easily connect to those other plants to go around Shelby County and actually save expenses in pipelines. To your comment about following the IUB rules with our property, the IUB set a place of where the pipeline was to be on our land. You chose, or Summit chose, to move that pipeline further to the west, further destroying more of our land, further taking more of our available farmland out of operation. So you're not following what the Iowa Utility Board said. Another question I have is you talked, safety was a conversation for this meeting. So if a valve blows up, that is then 40 miles of pipeline with CO2 releasing into the atmosphere. I don't know if anybody's ever brought it up. What if this defect or this breach happens at one of those valve stations? So you have now 40 miles of uncontrolled. It was testified by Summit at the Iowa Utility Board meeting by Jimmy Powell that small leaks in the pipe could go undetected for a long period of time. We know that when carbon dioxide interacts with moisture in the soil, it creates carbonic acid, which deteriorates pipes. So Summit testified themselves that they're going to have these small leaks in the pipe that will go undetected. So we're creating carbonic acid in the soil. That CO2 is getting into our water supply and our aquifer, which then creates arsenic. So if you have an oil spill or a gas spill, you see oil or gas, it doesn't mix with water, it floats. Arsenic, you're not going to know that the water you are drinking and consuming is contaminated with arsenic until people start to die. And at that point, it is simply too late. So lots of questions, lots of concerns about not following things of what has been promised with landowners, not following what the IUB has told you to do, the leaks contaminating our soil, and then the consumption of water. So what safeguards are there, and testing for the water lines that people consume to ensure it's safe to drink. And I also understand that Summit still has nothing with the rural water system as far as being able to cross their lines or permits to do that, just assuming that they're going to just take more of the water that we need to survive.
Okay, I will try and hit all of them. Let me know if I miss one. So the first one you asked about, when we come through to construct the pipeline, we will separate the topsoil and then we will work in that subsoil area. And then we put the pipeline in, we put the subsoil back on, and to make sure, then we come through and we compact it to make sure it's at the level we need it at. We then will come through and rip it so it's not overly compacted for the next planting season. There's two things. We're going to be well aware of what's in the ground because we just put the pipeline, so we're going to be very, very knowledgeable of the depth of everything that's in that ground. Very knowledgeable of how deep the river is going through that process. And then if there are specific landowners that don't want it ripped, things like that, that's conversations that plenty of landowners have had with their land agents to date on the specifics of their ground and the uniqueness of it.
How far out do those shock waves go? When they decompact the soil, it was testified by Summit before the Iowa Utility Board.
The shockwave of ripping the compaction?
The knifing of the soil, and they said it will create shock waves that will go out. So how far underground do those shock waves travel?
I guess I'm not a soil expert, but my understanding is just the length of the pipeline, the width of the pipeline.
So if the pipeline is an 8-inch pipe?
Well, we would be ripping in rows based on, right, we're going to have a travel lane where our equipment is, so that's going to be a piece that we're going to need to work on. Then we're going to have a place where the actual pipeline is placed. That's going to be where we need to work on. So there's kind of a larger swash, but it's depending on the size of the river, not far outside the length of the river itself.
So is it like 100 feet on each side of the pipe?
Again, I've never been asked this question before.
Okay, that would be an answer we would like. Okay, next.
Yes, we will be boring all roads in Shelby County. Since I'm not an expert on every road in the county, if there's maybe a 2-track or an unused road, it might be a conversation, but the plan right now is to bore every road.
Okay, my understanding is on some of the lower maintenance roads that are just the blacktop or gravel, that they're dirt, that they are not boring under. That was not in any plans that was submitted by Summit, so I think you might need to take a look at that.
Submitted by Summit.
In any of the plans that came out, there was no area for extra land that was taken for boring under the road.
So you were looking at the easement agreements on for the bore size, rather than what potentially was submitted either to the state or to Shelby County.
There was never any discussion with the land tenants, or the owners, sorry.
In an 8-inch pipeline, sometimes you can do it within that 50-foot or that 100-foot easement. So it's just going to depend on road size. So you wouldn't need what we call additional temporary workspace in certain situations, and I don't know specifically what you're talking about.
Where does the dirt pile when you're boring under?
The dirt pile when you move this, it will be in we'll have plenty of piles of subsoil, and it will be in the subsoil pile because we will have already separated the topsoil. A good chunk of the right of way is designed just to store soil. Following the IUC, so you must have had a required change from the IUC on your property.
The IU Utility Commission, yes, gave Summit a demand of where the pipeline need to be located. Summit chose to disregard what the Iowa Utility Commission said and put the pipeline where they chose or wanted to, which then created additional damage to our land and our property, and additional land that we will not be farming as a result of it.
I was pretty involved in those reviews and the constructability aspect of it. I can't speak exactly to yours. I'm happy to pull it up and we can look at it. But we did, in some situations, couldn't 100% comply with their request, and we always had a conversation with the IUC that was submitted with our response to the current conditions, and then it was approved by the IUC, the current existing route.
There was no information on your part as to why what the IUC was recommending could not be done. Summit had stated in their response that they just didn't feel it would cause any more damage, but it does to us as the landowner in Shelby County.
Again, I'm sorry that I can't speak specifically to your property, but I'm happy to pull it up and look at it after this meeting.
And what about the water?
So you were referencing, so there are situations where leak detection, which is the 24/7 monitoring, if we're only losing 1 or 2 PSI, really small amounts of CO2, there is a chance, very similar to gasoline and crude oil and natural gas, that the leak detection system may not immediately capture the fact that we're losing product in very minor amounts. Just because there's fluctuations in temperature and there's fluctuation in the pipeline based on system flows. So really small amounts might not immediately be detected, although we will see at some point that our input is different than our output, right? And it will be caught. But in that time, these situations would usually be due to corrosion at a location. Generally, that happens above ground at a valve site. If you look back into records. So if it were to happen underground, we run what are called inline inspection tools through the system, which is going to tell us depth of cover of the pipe. It's going to tell us internal, external corrosion. It's going to tell us denting, pitting, all the other information we didn't need to know about the system. We're also going to take that data, extrapolate it till we run the next tool. So we're going to have a general idea of what our corrosion rate is going to be. So we run that as the system kicks off, and then we periodically run it again based on our integrity management plan. But if there is a small leak that is somehow getting into a stream, CO2 in our pipeline will be moving liquid-like. I think you guys are generally familiar with, as soon as it leaves the pipeline, it will go from being a liquid-like substance, what we call supercritical, to immediately becoming gaseous, because CO2's natural state is to be gaseous. And everything the CO2 will want to do is find the equilibrium that's currently in the air. It has no desire to remain in water. It has no desire to remain in the soil. And it will move upwards into the air. So there will be a time where if, say, the release is near a water system, we'll see a higher level of acidic level. We'll see higher acidic levels for a short period of time. It will be doing everything it can to find its own equilibrium up in the air. So we will, during construction, if there's water wells nearby, look at testing before and after construction to make sure there was no damage, things like that, to verify the water sources.
But what about going onward after this pipe is in the line? So what guarantee is there that the water that we drink has not been contaminated with arsenic?
I guess once the pipeline is in the ground, we'll be doing periodic reviews. You have to have a pretty large amount of CO2 in the water to not be immediately evaporating into gaseous air. So when you're talking about, assuming the carbonic acid level, we're seeing through studies that it's just not staying in water.
Okay. And what about from the safety standpoint with that valve that would blow and then 40 miles of CO2?
I guess if both sides of a double-sided valve fail, which is something would be pretty unique in the system. I think the natural gas line did have that happen one time in Houston, from my memory. You know, there we would close the valves up and downstream, and we would have an emergency response plan that will work out and have set in place before we ever go into operations on exactly what to do in various different situations in controlling the environment.
And what is that emergency response plan? We just shelter in place?
It's going to be unique to each area, and it's going to be built out with the county, so Shelby counties will look different than Montgomery counties based on the capabilities and the available resources of that specific county. So they'll be unique to the county.
I know we've got other folks who want to ask questions, and thank you, those were all good questions. I did fail to mention, we'd like to keep the comments from the public to 3 minutes maximum, so we get a chance to get around to everybody who has questions.
I'd like to just ask a question. My beginning also was, what is the advantage, excuse me, of the pipeline for me, a landowner? I went to my insurance company 3 years ago and I asked if they knew anything about the carbon pipeline, and they said, no, we haven't heard of it. Then a man walked in, a young man came in from the company, and he said, whoa. He said, I have just gotten an email from Farm Service, not Farm Service, but, well, anyway, one of the other companies. And he said, don't touch the pipeline, don't make any insurance plans whatsoever because it's a pollutant. And so from then on, I mean, I still have liability insurance because the pipeline hasn't come through and I haven't signed the easement. But when I sign an easement, my liability insurance for that piece of property will be done. And if anything happens, I will be responsible. So I appreciate your answers, but none of this has really been proven. So for me, it's very scary. So if anything happens, I am liable. I know recently, it's my understanding that Summit just bought liability insurance for themselves, and this would cover me during construction. If they come into my property and something happens and they're there and responsible, they would take care of that. But when they're gone or down the road, when we remember this is a forever easement, forever, which we've never heard of before. When that next group turns over, when your Summit pipeline is done, and this goes to some foreign investors, or who knows, we don't know who this is going to go to as this goes on, I will have no one to stand up for me. So I will have no liability insurance. Now, a business that hopes to keep operating and operating in a wise way has to have liability insurance. This is huge. And we've had no offer from anyone to say, we'll help with this. So I think anybody with a business or a farm knows how important liability insurance is. So any answers on that?
Yes, couple things. One, you cannot insure the pipeline because we insure the pipeline because we own the asset. So we are required to have insurance on our pipeline because it's our asset, so it can't be insured under an individual farm insurance. We talked about what requires us to do that. I guess first, there's 60,000 miles of pipeline in this state. All of those landowners are able to get insurance on their properties. There's 3 million miles of pipeline in this country. All of those landowners are able to get insurance on their properties. But further, the Iowa Utilities Commission put in our order the requirements that we must uphold in terms of insurance levels. So that was all spelled out. The minimum levels were all spelled out by the IUC. If we were for any reason to, which we don't have any plans to, but if it was to be sold, that sale has to be approved by the IUC. So you mentioned the foreign entity. That would all have to be approved and agreed to by the Iowa Utilities Commission, which they would then have to put, I would assume, I can't speak for what they do, require the same amount of insurance policies that they're requiring on us.
Okay, then I'd like to ask then, why do I still have on that property my name, and I am paying the property taxes? So how can you say that the pipeline owns maybe the pipe, but that property on paper is still mine? I am still liable, and I cannot see anywhere where the pipeline is willing to accept any responsibility other than what they can prove that they have caused. If something happens 10 years down the road, it's going to be on me, because I can't fight $1 billion business.
I think our liability is laid out pretty explicitly in the easement agreement. And it covers anything except intentional damage to the pipeline. If you go out with the intent to do damage to the pipeline, and it's not under the liability insurance or liability in the easement, but other than that, it's spelled out in the easement agreement.
I know that's in there, but why will my insurance companies will not touch it? They know something that they're not sharing.
I think they will not insure the pipeline as it's not your asset. Right?
Well, it's my liability. They are trying to cover it. That's how it works. Thank you.
Hi, Cindy Hansen, Shelby County landowner, Century Farm owner. So to Jan's point, we have a letter from our insurance company saying that we cannot get liability insurance on our ground if that pipeline goes through because it's a pollutant. So even though you say that you guys will cover damages, I know any large company has lawyers that are going to try and take the blame away from that company. They're going to try and put it on the landowner. Our neighbor has a hog confinement across the road, 700 feet from the pipeline. If that pipeline ruptures and the hog confinement is downhill from the pipeline, they're going to lose over $500,000 worth of hogs and possibly 3 men that are working in that building that day. The liability alone would more than bankrupt us. Morally, ethically, I can't live with something happening to them. This pipeline is a joke, no offense. To Mary's point about the water, along with arsenic, Iowa land is known to carry lead, cadmium, and uranium. If we have a leak or a rupture into that soil or into our water, the carbonic acid from that water, yes, I understand that the carbon will eventually leave, but the colder the water is, the longer, and it's still water, if it's not moving, is going to sit longer with that carbon in it. So it's going to pull those minerals and other factors out of the soil and into the water and contaminate our groundwater, possibly contaminating our water wells, contaminating our soil, making it acidic. Our creeks, we have a creek at the bottom of our farm ground. What do you guys do to mitigate or to correct all those deficiencies that we have in our soil if that happens, along with the thought that the CO2, when it's released, the temperature is going to be, what, 70 below zero? So it's going to kill all the microbes, it's going to kill the earthworms that help with compaction in our soil. It sterilizes soil at that temperature. I mean, there's so much going on that you guys have not addressed that's important to farmers. We need to have answers for those kind of things.
Yeah, so a couple things on that. If there is any damage from either construction or pipeline-related events in the future, it is, if it's your property or your neighbor's property, falls under the liability of the pipeline company to come out and repair. That would include if for any reason your soils weren't returning back to normal levels, your crops weren't returning back to normal levels for several years. That would all be inclusive of any type of repair and remediation requirements that we have, that I believe both the IUC as well as PIMSA would be involved in.
My name is Rose Johnson, and I'm one of Louis Roseman's farmers, and I just have a couple quick questions. So your company is going to try to take land from us using eminent domain, and so I would like to know, what is the percentage of Iowa landowners that you would receive voluntary easements from?
So we have about 75% right now. I'm only referencing phase one, just for not confusion, we haven't really started acquisition in phase two.
And then of the 25% that you haven't received voluntary easements from, what number is that? Is that like hundreds?
It would be hundreds, but we have made no steps towards that process in any way. We're still working with landowners and continue to, although we were granted authority from the state, no process has started in that front.
And in Shelby County, what percentage of landowners are you pursuing going to pursue eminent domain?
Again, we have not started that process to date. Over 55% have signed.
And of the 45% that haven't signed, what number would that be?
I don't know. But again, we're still working through the easement agreement process across the state.
And so it's just very sad. It's so sad that we landowners that have had farms in our family for over 100 years, that you can just come and take those away from us using eminent domain. Very sad.
Introduce yourself. Yep. So I'm Alex Londo. I'm the emergency management coordinator for the county. I just have a couple quick questions. So we have pipelines currently in the county. We work very closely with those pipeline companies about emergency response plans and different things. My first question is your stance still to only start preparations and training for the different fire departments and response jurisdictions in the county once the pipeline is being put in, or are you going to be doing anything prior to that?
We'll be doing the main training during construction, just so it's, the people who will still be on, and it will still be in recent memory, okay. And then it will be annual following that. We'll continue to have conversations of any questions that you have until we do the formal training. Okay, and then to kind of piggyback off of that, so we have several different jurisdictions within the pipeline area. Some of them have some aging equipment, need different air monitors and things like that, or not air monitors, SCBAs to be able to go into zones like this, and that all takes time to purchase, and we need to find those deficiencies before the pipeline's at the ground so we can be better prepared for that. So we're going to be looking at doing different tabletops and things, and I'm hoping that you guys can be a part of those as the company, because I know the other pipeline companies have been a part of it. But I know you've offered grant, potentially a grant for the county. Is there going to be any other funding that is available to some of these departments that might need equipment updates aside from what you're going to provide? Yeah, I guess to answer your first question, happy to be part of tabletops. The second question, yeah, we did an initial grant, and what we're calling that is an initial grant, that the plan is for that to come out at the beginning of construction. Construction's expected to take, 12, maybe up to 18 months, so it's not going to be an immediate process. At the beginning of construction, and then we're looking at another grant once we're in operations, and then it's pretty standard for pipeline companies. So we're saying grant, but they're going to every county, you don't have to apply for them, to have a bucket for concerning areas annually that we'll reach out and have conversations about when we do the annual tabletop requirements.
Okay. And then finally, my last question is, I think somebody brought it up here, but for animal livestock, if there was ever an emergency, I know this is something that got brought up with one of our other pipelines, people are always thinking about the human aspect, which is obviously the most important, but the next aspect would be livestock. And there is a lot of hog confinements and different things in that area. Is that something that you plan on addressing in any emergency plans that you have?
So as the plan would be to build the plans out with you. So we can definitely have that process and have any procedures that you feel we need.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Don Law, I'm one of the protective landlords. First of all, I think that this whole carbon thing, affecting climate change and whatnot, is a great big snow job considering what they can't answer about climate change in the past, like the ice age, whatnot. One question I have, you've been offering landlords a lump sum to sign an easement, which can cause a considerable tax liability. Did you ever consider offering an annual royalty for the thing? I heard there was some pipeline that was going to be built in Nebraska offering that.
Yeah, so in the lump sum, we can't do much about taxes. We have had some landowners ask for us to split it out over, 2 years or so they can break that up in certain ways, which has happened. But in terms of having an annual royalty on the pipeline, it's not standard in the pipeline industry. The lump sum up front is actually, when you start talking numbers, is generally preferred for the landowner. But where royalties really usually come in is when you're talking something like a windmill or a solar farm where they're every year they're taking up land that you would otherwise be farming versus the pipeline or, all the miles pipeline that exists in this state runs underground and people farm over top of them every day. So it's kind of the royalty tends to come when you're taking land out of production annually. Historically at least, so at this point we are working on a lump sum up front.
Well, the plants you're hooking up, they aren't paying you a lump sum, are they?
Like the ethanol plants themselves?
Yeah.
They're not paying us a lump sum?
Yeah. They're paying you over a long period of time, however long you serve them to carry the...
Yeah, we're a common carrier, so as they carry assets, or as they carry through the pipeline,
Well, why doesn't the landowner deserve the same consideration?
it's just not how the pipeline industry has it.
Maybe you should change that.
I'll take that back and ask about it.
Yeah, I'm George Langefeld. Got one question. About 3 years ago, we could feel a slight tremor from an earthquake. So we're sitting over a fault line not too far from here. Are you guys taking into consideration of possibly having a major earthquake and what's going to happen to your pipeline?
Yeah, all pipelines review seismic activity and the geotechnical risk to it. They lay pipelines in California, they lay pipelines over fault lines, so it's not something the industry is new to or unfamiliar with. And the ductability of steel, especially today compared to 20 years ago, is pretty great. And the studies show that generally pipelines, historically pipelines have been able to withstand very well. So all the areas where you hear about them having major earthquakes, you're not hearing about concerns in the pipeline industry, even though pipelines, zigzag this whole country.
So can I follow up on that? Because George Lawson, did you lose your house? Yeah, April 26th to a tornado. What kind of, if the above ground part, is it going to be able to withstand a tornado?
The steel in the above ground appurtenances, the valves or the launcher sites, I think in this county is valves, have a pretty amazing ability to withstand strength. Obviously, force majeure, we can't plan for everything. I will never sit up here and say there's a 0% risk on this pipeline, but we will plan and have plans in place for unlikely events. We will build and design the system to minimize as much as possible, and the above ground infrastructure is pretty heavy duty steel.
Just one more quick question from me. If the current administration, going through the IRA, decides to delete the 45Q and 45Z tax credits, will this project continue?
I'm the engineer, so I don't work on the commercial side and the evaluation of the project, so I can't give you an answer. What we're seeing today is the Trump administration seems to have a high support for e-fuels, for ethanol, for sustainable aviation fuel, as well as for the energy sector as a whole, and in the pipeline industry.
Your proposed route is going north to south. So does that mean you're going under State Highway 44 and under the interstate? And how would that be affected?
That's a pretty short answer, yes, but I was gonna look. Yes, so we will work with the Department of Transportation to get a permit, usually always on a large road. It will be a designed horizontal directional drill, which is us taking an engineered design and doing no surface disturbance in the right-of-way nor on the pavement. And we will start out more in the field, and we will drill down underneath and lay the pipeline without surface disturbance.
And traffic over the years, thousands and thousands of cars every day, wouldn't affect this pipeline?
No, we have done all load analysis on the pipeline, as well as kind of looked at the historical data of all the pipelines currently in the ground. But under the roadways will be 5 feet, minimum 5 feet from the lowest point of the ditch. So we're generally pretty far under the ground. We also put an additional safety factor on the pipe when it's running under roads.
Kylie, you said one of the reasons this project is happening is because a lot of the ethanol plants can't afford to do alternatives. They can't sequester locally, they can't come up with alternative products and so on. Is there any logic to taking all of the billions of dollars of tax credits out there and applying them to specific sites rather than some sort of multi-state process to pipe it and put it elsewhere? And not disturb everybody else as well?
I don't create policy. We're following the policy that's in place, and I don't create it nor do some carbon solutions or do ethanol plants.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I believe that some of the comments have been made about hog buildings, and unfortunately, I think that one of ours is right on the line, and I think they're talking about ours. Certainly, we have a residence that's within 700 feet of the pipeline, 730, I believe. But we also have neighbors that are downhill from that. We're concerned certainly with both of those situations. Obviously, it is in an area where it would be very much limits where we can expand, because that's the next best place for generations of ours to expand onto. But the hog thing, and just to address that, the confinement unit, we had a couple of buildings taken out by the tornadoes, a couple of different tornadoes. If this happens in the area of a hog facility, it's kind of like stand back and watch, because it took us several hours of a team of a dozen to move this livestock out. It's not like evacuating people. It takes a long time. So certainly that's a concern of ours. I have not checked specifically. We have suffocation. We have all sorts of insurance on those facilities. But I am not sure that we can get CO2. I do not believe that is the case.
If anything, in the unexpected situation that something were to happen, again, that liability would fall on the company rather than the landowner. But if you have concerns about, the safety of the pipeline, I'd be happy to sit down and have a longer conversation with you on it.
Any other questions?
What would be the response time? Because the office is in Ames, right?
No one from the Ames office is going to be on that first response
Are
team.
there gonna be people that work for Summit living in Shelby County that will respond?
Their exact living locations we're still working through, but there's federal regulation on response times. We also staff the ethanol plants 24/7.
Well, we don't have a plan.
But the pipeline itself has federal regulation on response times. Usually the response times are designed for emergency 811, so someone else is unexpectedly digging up a pipeline. We need to be able to get there quickly and make sure they're not doing any damage to our pipeline. So that's what they're designed for. So you have to have people that live and work across the system to, at any given time, respond to emergency 811 calls.
Have you talked to hazmat?
I haven't talked to the hazmat, where does it come out of Denison?
Well, there's a tri-county hazmat, but they're probably gonna be told, set up a barrier, and Omaha Council Bluffs called in. I'm just assuming, I don't know, that's why I asked you to talk to hazmat.
I'm not on the emergency response team.
Roger Beeson here. We are part of the hazmat team, and we are part of Tri-County Hazmat, which covers Shelby, Crawford, and Harrison counties. And so we are trained at a technician level, and we do have training in dealing with carbon. We will continue to do more training as this project moves forward. So we do have the response team here locally that will be working with the Carbon Solutions team.
Another question back here also.
My question for you is, what's the security on those stations itself? You know, just for tourist attack or something like that, if something happens.
They will be gated with cameras. They will be locked gated. It'll be pretty similar if you see a valve. You see like a little small above ground area when you drive around at corners that have some pipeline equipment. It'll be pretty similar to that, other than we'll have a full length gate, which natural gas doesn't always.
How much water will you be using for moving this CO2 across the pipeline?
I guess there's been a lot of confusion. There is no water in the pipeline. So the only thing in the pipeline is nearly pure CO2. When we talk about the water use, it happens at the ethanol plant itself. No water goes in the pipeline. As has been mentioned here, you do not want water mixing with CO2. At the ethanol plant, we have to compress the CO2 to get in the pipeline. So at the cooling agents, we'll need to use water to keep it cool.
How much?
It'll be about, every ethanol plant's different depending on their size, but it'll be about a 9% increase from what they're using today.
How many gallons is that?
It's a different, for each plant, it's different depending if they run every week of the year or if they're shut down for 6 weeks. So it's just what they use, there's going to be a 9% increase.
But that takes the water out of our aquifer that we use for drinking, for our creeks, for our natural springs. So it's taking away the water supply from islands that we need for farming, for livestock, for human consumption. And we're in a drought.
We will go through the IDNR for all permitting, or for all water use, and permitting our water use. When we looked at total water use for the state, we took the reports that they posted, and we looked at what ethanol was using today. Today, ethanol is using approximately 1% of the state's total water usage. When our system comes online, it will go from using 1% of the total water in the state to using 1.1% of the total water in the state. So we have looked at that. But again, that will be specific to the capture equipment, and there will be no water in the pipeline.
So do you agree with the estimated 3.36 billion gallons of water a year? And that's just for phase one.
I believe those numbers were estimated incredibly high with a lot of assumptions put into it that were incorrect.
They were based off of Illinois' use.
Again, I'm not familiar with what Illinois is using. I know enough about our capture equipment that you can take the ethanol plants in Iowa and increase it 9%, that's going to be the use. And actually, when I did that, when I created the 1.1 number, I just assumed every plant in the state was connected because it was a little bit easier.
Steve's got something to add. Yeah, I just want to follow up with some comment or some notes I made for clarification. Okay. One, because I just heard in the last week or so about the Galva plant closing. Okay. And that line's going from Galva down to Shenandoah, 125 miles, to pick up one plant. Now it's going to be, what, 140, 50 with Galva closing?
My understanding is Galva's temporarily closed, but again, I'm not
Either way,
super familiar with it. The plan is.
I know there's ethanol plants closer to Shenandoah, north and east. Are you looking at going up there to hook up instead of running it 150 miles through everybody's ground?
At this point, the route is locked down. We do also have the Poet plant down in Adams County connected to the system as well.
Well, I'm sure it doesn't lock down. If, let's say Shenandoah closed, you still gonna run it down there then?
We are connecting to the Poet plant down south at this point as well.
Okay. Do landowners receive, that was a good question I brought up before. Do landowners receive the same benefits if they're eminent domain as if they sign an easement as far as with land restoration, all those things, they get the same benefits?
My understanding is the agreement is public, and it's nearly the same agreement.
Okay, so landowners, if they get eminent domain, get the same benefits, the ones that sign the
Yeah, all the liability, all of that, the agreement, and it is public, the agreement that will go through the process again.
Okay.
My job is to sign up landowners, so I'm not involved in it.
Then you made a statement before that there's 60,000 miles of hazardous pipelines in Iowa. How many miles of that is CO2?
There are no CO2 pipelines in
Yeah, so
Iowa.
it's very misleading when you make those statements because it's not the same as a hazardous gas line as natural gas. Natural gas, their main transmission lines, when I talk to them, are 80 to 90, or excuse me, 8 to 900 pounds. You run more than double that. And they have an odorant in it if it leaks, or you guys have no odorant in yours.
Natural gas transmission lines don't have odorants in them.
No, but they do when they get into the towns.
The feeder lines
Right.
will have an odorant, but
Right.
transmission lines do not.
So we're talking two different things.
But when I was referencing that, I was referencing it on how insurance is handled, and a steel pipe in the ground is a steel pipe in the ground. And that's, you can look at the CO2 pipelines that do exist in this country, in North Dakota, in Texas, Michigan, and plenty of other places, and it's handled the same way.
Yeah, but they're just have a lot higher consequences with twice the pressure.
I think the state of Iowa does run in hydrosimony lines, which are handled the same way and about the same pressure.
2,100 tons.
I think they go to 1,800, 1,900.
See, we have one in our county.
No, not Shelby, but across.
Okay.
You asked about Iowa.
Okay. On construction, when the construction would start here, so do they buy their supplies locally, like the same people that what am I say, utility people locally, that hire labor here, that get gas here, that get supplies here? I know they're not gonna get the pipe here. But are they gonna be supporting us locally?
Yes, and we're going union on the project, and, you know, they have to eat somewhere, they have to work somewhere. We'll need things like dust control, which are generally more localized thing, various.
So they might be buying fuel, getting their employees here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to wrap up in about 8 minutes because we have some other meetings that some of these folks have to get to. Anybody else have a question they'd like to pose? Okay. I don't see anything, so I'd like to thank Kylie and Riley and all those who attended today to find out more information. Appreciate the respect that was shown. Good tough questions and good answers for the most part. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to the chair. Meeting adjourned.